Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Hey, welcome back. Have you ever thought of writing your own book? Maybe you're a professional and you want some notoriety for what you do or maybe what you've done. How do you self-publish? Where do you even begin with that? She helps people with that all the time. She also helps with content. She's a freelance writer, helps you with all aspects of this. And she's here from Hen House Publishing. She's Karen Smith. Hey, Karen, how you doing?
I'm fine. Thank you for having me.
So you're live and direct from a small hobby farm in Ohio. Do I have that right?
Yes.
What's a hobby farm?
A hobby farm is a small farm. In my case, we're just a smidgen over 10 acres, and it's enough to support a hobby. I happen to have horses.
Wow. So Hen House Publishing. Do you have chickens?
I do.
Wow. Do they lay eggs? I know we digress here. Just curious.
Yep. Actually, I do have hens and they do lay eggs, and I refuse to have roosters. So yes.
Wow. Interesting. What brought you to a farm?
I grew up in the country, and as a child, I had rabbits, and my brothers 1 year raised pigs, and my best friends were farmers. So it was something I always wanted, growing up, was to live on a farm. And after my husband and I had been married for several years, we were able to buy a small farm. And this is where we had our family.
Fantastic. Honestly, I envy you. I think it's so cool. I don't live in the big city. I live just outside of a city, but many times I've thought, wouldn't it be just great? Just, simpler way of life. Not, doesn't mean there's not stress, but just a different way to look at things. And certainly if you want to write content, stories, whatever it might be, different place to do it, I would imagine.
Yeah, well, after a long time, my husband cleared out the front room, which, you see me sitting in here now, and with this lovely 1970s knotty pine paneling.
It's all part of it, though. That's all part of it.
It's an old house. The room, it's quiet. It has a wonderful benefit compared to the last office I worked in, which had no windows. I mean, it's like, you had to get up and walk out of your office into the front vestibule there to see outside, to see what the weather was doing. It was like living in a cave. So I have my room, I have windows on 3 sides, and it's great.
Envy you once again. I'm in an office building. It's all good. Got windows, can't open them. They don't open. I'm like, why would they design a building that you can't open the windows? But anyway, at least you got light. So, and I know it's partly sunny out. So there you go. Writing, self-publishing. What are some of the steps? Where do we begin with that? Help us out.
Okay. Well, if you want to self-publish, you basically begin with an either-or scenario. Either you start writing it, you write it yourself, or you hire someone to write it for you. So
let's look at writing for you just for a minute.
Okay.
Let's go hypothetical here. I'm a cosmetic surgeon.
Okay.
And I want people to know what it's like to make that decision to do cosmetic surgery. So I've got lots of ideas for a book. I'm not a writer. I also don't have time. I would hire somebody like you to write it. What would I need to give you in order to write it?
Well, first you would work with the writer to develop a plan for the book. Okay, so you would develop, what are your goals for the book? What do you want to convey? What's the kind of message you want to send? Who is your audience? Because you have to know who's going to buy this book, and then you have to write to that audience. So you would go over things like that, and perhaps even a timeline as to when you want to have this thing done. Then you go from there, and your ghostwriter will work with you. to develop an outline for the book. We're going to hit these points in this specific order, and this is what each point is going to address. Then perhaps you have information to give to the ghostwriter. Say, you have some articles to refer to, articles that you have written, articles that you have read. It's like, hey, this is all good information to pull into this.
Okay.
The ghostwriter will interview you to get your personal perspectives on this, your history, your experiences and anecdotes, and weave them all together.
Would it be somebody, let's say that's busy? Could they do voice to, record themselves? I got an idea for this chapter. They pound out a bunch of information, then provide you with the recording. You transcribe it, and that can be done online too.
Yeah.
Would that be, one of the ways to do that?
Yeah, and that is certainly a good way to do it. I have spoken with, some other people regarding ghostwriting, their memoirs, for instance. And one of the things is that, look, basically 10 minutes of you speaking into a microphone translates into several hours of work for me, because it's more than just transcriptions, trying to make sense and organizing it. So, and then, the back and forth process begins, but the ghostwriter does the heavy lifting.
Wow. So let's say we've gotten to the point, we've got a lot of content, we have everything figured out, chapters, flow of the book, the target audience, and all of that. Where do we go from there?
Well, we start with that subject and say, let's talk. Okay. So this is where the interviewing part comes out.
Okay.
And this is why I don't do biographies. I don't, when I ghostwrite for people, I typically either ghostwrite articles or I ghostwrite fiction. Because when you're ghostwriting someone for an authority building book, let's say, as in your scenario, or a business oriented book or something, or a biography, there's a lot of interviewing that has to go on. And that requires someone who's good at conducting interviews. And that's having a really curious and keen mind. You've got to be receptive to pull out these, these nuggets of information. I know someone who, I think she was an interviewer with I think it was the CIA. And she's now a ghostwriter, and she does, biographies and memoirs primarily. And because she has that background, she has that training, she's very good at what she does.
Wow.
Me, I don't like prying, honestly. So I'm not the person you would ask for that sort of book, but I do know the process.
Got it. So let's say you have this book, you have a lot of the content ready to go.
Mm-hmm.
What's next? What let's say we've spent some time. When we talk about time, how long could it possibly take to compile everything for you to write a book for me?
It really depends. It's like asking how long is a piece of string. So if if you have your outline and everything, you know where you're going, you have a general idea of how long the book's going to be.
Mm-hmm.
And it will depend on how accurately the ghostwriter gets the concept and conveys it in the early rounds, in the first stage, because there's a give and take to these sorts of projects. The ghostwriter will draft something, will draft content, and then submit it to the client, who then has to go through it and basically say, yeah, this is right, or no, we need to cut this out, or this isn't quite the way I want it, so let's tweak it here and revise and rewrite a little bit. And it goes back and forth. Different ghostwriters have different limits on how many rounds of revision they will accept, with, for the rate that they charge. When I am ghostwriting for a client, I cap revisions at 3 rounds. for the simple reason that if you don't put some sort of cap on there, you could be stuck in rounds of revision for eternity and never get paid.
Yeah. And that's totally reasonable. And you never know where it's going to go. You might think that the person you're writing the book for has all the information. They're ready to, it's all ready to go. You just got to organize it. It's extract some of the facts, whatever it might be. But that might not be the case. And now you're in eternity. Yeah.
Right. It's very much a discovery process.
Yeah.
So if I'm ghostwriting fiction, what has happened, and sometimes still does happen depending on the client, is we talk at the beginning. We kind of hash out, this is the premise, this is kind of where I want the story to go, but we don't know how to get there. And then I say, well, let me float some ideas by you. I had one client, she started off, it was going to be a not, I would say young adult, not quite as early as middle grade, but a young adult fantasy. And it ended up turning into a trilogy. It was
Wow.
so it really expanded beyond the original concept. But we would go through, we would have a basically half-hour chat every week, and we would discuss what's going to happen in the next chapter. We would kind of bounce some ideas back and forth, and that worked out really well. So she knew where the story was going, and she got what she wanted.
How interesting. It started out one way and turned out to be a trilogy.
The idea was bigger than we both expected it when it started.
Did the person that you wrote that book for or helped them out with, did they have character definition? Did they have all of it, or you helped work them through it?
She had some character, she had a character sheet written up, the names, some basic traits of the character, both physical and just personality type traits. Those traits tended to evolve as we got deeper into the story, because people evolve, they change as they grow and they learn and they do things. So that happened. And I introduced a couple of characters that turned into very important characters in the story. So
Wow.
it was, and then she based the story premise very, very loosely on the Mahabharata, which is an Indian history, but it's more like mythology. So the Mahabharata, which I have not read, let's be really clear on this, I have not read it, is enormous. It's an enormous lexicon of stories, and very involved and intricate, with a huge pantheon of heroes and gods. So we had to condense a lot of it down to fit the characters that we had and for a modern audience.
Is that fun for you? A book like that? I mean, there's all different types that you can work on, but that particular one, was that this fun little project I got going on here?
It was daunting at first, but then it kind of got into the groove. It's like, this is a lot of fun. Yeah.
Have you read books similar to that?
I have.
Okay.
I have. So yeah, it's my tastes in reading tend to be fairly eclectic. So I'll read the back of the cereal box. So
and your taste in literature is my taste in music. Like I could listen to anything. I'll go to live music. Tell me where, I'll be there. I don't care what it is. I have lots of people that in my world that's like, I'm not going to see that. I don't want to see that. I'm like, I don't care. There's something about live music, or just different types of music. So I think it's kind of the same way with what you read.
Yeah, it is. For instance, movies, go to movies, and I love costume dramas. And at the same time, the period historicals, things like that. At the same time, I'm happy watching something, what was it? The Expendables.
Hmm.
You go from, I could go from The Cook of Castamar to The Expendables and be perfectly happy.
How do you define costume? I'm trying
Call
to
them costume dramas.
dramas. Yeah. What
Yeah.
is that?
That was a term my mother used. I grew up with it, so it's kind of natural to me to use that. Um, it's a costume drama would be something like Bridgerton. Okay.
Okay.
It's a period piece. So you're talking about, it takes place in the, 1500s, the 1800s, whatever. It's a period piece. Um, so The Patriot would be a costume drama.
Personally,
Probably,
I love those. I love my first on the list would be anything from the 1800s. You mentioned it, so I'm going to say
Mhm.
1800s. I don't know what it is. People tell me that believe in reincarnation or whatever, that I probably lived during that time and came back just because I could look at pictures from the 1800s for hours. Um, Photography was just recently introduced. There wasn't a lot of technology, simpler way of life, but it wasn't, there was a little bit going on, but not too much. I don't know what it is. God no, I could write a book about it.
Yeah, so it's I
Hmm,
enjoy history, so watching those reproductions, the stories
cool.
that take place in history, I find them interesting, and I always love to point out the anachronisms. Those are fun.
So we're at self-publishing. We've gotten to the point where we've gotten all the content. That's pretty much the workings of a book. Where do we go from here?
Okay, well, once we have the book drafted and the client has signed off on it, I suggest it goes to an editor, and that editor would not be the ghostwriter. Get another editor, because the worst thing you can do is hire someone to edit his own work. Basically, that's you're the ghostwriter is too close to the story, just like an author is too close to his own story when he finishes writing it. So we go to an editor. Um, if you've structured this well, you probably don't need a developmental editor. There are different kinds of editing.
Wow.
So you probably go to a sentence level editor, which would be either a line editor or a copy editor or or both, or someone who combines the two. That editor will go through, basically check for the misspellings, oh, you used the twice in this sentence, things like that, refining the writing, making it a little better, basically just improving it in general, because nothing is ever good the first time out, really. So the editor will do that and possibly make some suggestions. This section really isn't pertinent. Let's cut it out. Or this section needs some more development to really make it more interesting or more applicable to what you're trying to say. That's what an editor, various editors will do. After you revise, then hopefully you should not need a second round of editing, but sometimes you do. It's just the way it goes. And after that round of revision, you would then hire someone to perform book design for you. This is page layout.
Now, this is something you do.
Yeah, I do editing and I do page layout.
Would you ghostwrite,
Mm-hmm.
send it to an editor because it's complete? And we talked about that last time. Completely
Right.
reasonable to think that you can't edit your own stuff. Not you, just in general. You make one mistake, you might not see it because it's yours.
Right.
Would you get it back from the editor and then you lay out the book?
If the client wants me to.
Okay.
So, and that's happened with a few clients of mine. So yeah, do the page layout, and generally I have someone, I advise the client to have someone else do the cover art, because although I do page design, I am not a graphic artist. So it's good to know where your limits are.
Gotcha.
I'm pretty limited in that area. So, I've done some covers, I've done some simple covers. Simple is about all I'm capable of when it comes to that. And the person who does the book design has to work with the person who does the page design. I mean the cover design, because dimensions matter. It's like, well, my book is going to be 6x9. Okay, but how wide your spine? And that spine makes all the difference. The kind of paper you use, how many pages you have, it all factors into the width of the spine, which then affects the size of your cover. Yeah. So, and that's something, a lot of authors is like, oh, I hadn't realized that, so once again, it's just a little something that it helps to know ahead of time. And once you have the files, you'll have, your cover files, which print and cover, your cover file for print will be a high resolution PDF. Your file for upload for your book for print will be a PDF, high resolution, of course. Your cover file for the ebook will be a JPEG. And your ebook file, which, to upload, will probably be an EPUB, or it could be a Microsoft Word document. And the system, like if you were uploading to KDP, will probably do a decent conversion for you. But I don't format for ebooks, because ebook formatting and print formatting are very different.
Are people still big on demand publishing?
Print on demand, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's Amazon's model.
Okay. Yeah, I wasn't aware of that. I knew that you could do it through Amazon. I know somebody that did recently. It was a children's book. You still have to go through all this, everything we're talking about, until you get to that point, right?
Yeah, I mean, for print, it doesn't matter if you're doing offset publishing or web press, or you're doing print on demand. The whole process before you send everything to the printer is the same.
Same. Yep. You have to have good quality stuff no matter where you go with it, whether it's on demand, whether it's, web printed, whether it's whether it's a Kindle. It's all the same.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the quality of the writing matters, the quality of the editing matters, and the quality of the finished product as far as its appearance, which would be your page design or your ebook formatting. That matters.
Have you ever gone through, it's cliche, but I wonder, writer's block? You have a
Yes.
task at hand.
I don't call it writer's block. When I have a writing assignment for a client, typically that involves some direction. If it's an article or a blog or something like that, the client will say, hey, I want you to write on this topic. This is the direction we're going with it. And I can take that and run. That I don't have an issue with that. I tend to get writer's block, or I tend to suffer a creative hiatus when it's my own work. And that kind of depends on my emotional state sometimes. I had a family tragedy in 2021, and I called my clients. I said, I can't write. I can't do anything right now. I have to recover. My son died.
So sorry.
Thank you. And I was traumatized. I was devastated. And so I called my clients, said, I can't deal with anything right now. I have to get through this. And, it took a little while, but I managed to start writing again. at least professionally, my own writing suffered for a long time. I didn't publish anything that year. I didn't publish
Totally
anything.
Understandable. I mean,
I didn't. Yeah, it was, when something really traumatic hits you, you go into survival mode, and when you're in survival mode, you can't really be creative.
Yeah.
I also tell people who haven't gone through anything traumatic and that they're just suffering a block, and my response is, give it time. I kind of use the analogy of a well. Your creativity is like a well, and if you drain that well dry, there's nothing, you can't draw from it anymore. You have to wait for it to refill. Once it refills, you can start drawing on it, but you have to, now that you know that you can drain it dry, to be a little more careful with it.
Wow. Interesting viewpoints coming from creative people. I think it's so cool. Like, it's even finding the inspiration to write something, I think is amazing. I give you a lot of credit.
Well, thank you. I've fielded questions, from people. Where do you get ideas? Ideas are everywhere. Really, they are. You can pluck them from the air. It's not the idea that's really important. It's developing it. That's hard work.
Yeah. Well, even talking about the process to self-publish, I can see that in everything that we've gone through here, where somebody has an idea for a book. Okay, great. Where are we going with that? It's like you have to have the foundation. You are part of the foundation in this whole process, because the rest of us, we don't write. We don't know. We just have an idea. Is it a good idea? Can be, but somebody like you can see the merits or not in it and put that together. We're out of time. I'm like, and it's so funny when we first started, it's like, I don't know if we could talk about this for a full podcast, but yeah, because there's a lot involved. And we're kind of up to the point where it's ready to publish. Anybody thinking about any of this, or even creating content, or even book design, all of that you offer, how do we find you, Karen?
I can be found online through LinkedIn. That's Karen M, middle initial M as in Marie Smith. I have a website, henhousepublishing.com. So yes, we go back to the chickens, henhousepublishing.com.
It's endearing. And I just have a visual of you being there and in that atmosphere, which I believe is conducive to writing. That's just me, and creativity.
I like it. I like the country.
Great talking with you today.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thanks. We'll be right back.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house.
And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned.
This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.